What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Extremely busy week. So I want to kind of go back to cover something that I really wanted to talk about because a few days ago, the NBA had a very interesting situation where the Milwaukee Bucks, one of the teams in the, I believe it's the playoffs, decided not to come out and take the court prior to Game 5. I don't know what the play. I haven't watched basketball in years. I don't know. I don't know if it's still 7-game series in the first round or what, but Game 5 is a super big game. But prior to Game 5 was the killing of, or I'm sorry, the shooting of, I can't remember, Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Now, obviously, Kenosha and Milwaukee, I think they're like 45 minutes or so apart. So, and with the NBA currently playing in, I think what they call the bubble, where all the players are, I think it's in Disney World or something like that. They're all in this one facility where they're all playing their games, so they can kind of be free from the pandemic and also be able to have their games. And it created a scenario where they're able to resume sports, unlike other leagues where they couldn't continue to play. So, the Bucks didn't come out of the tunnel. They didn't attend shoot around, and because of that, other NBA teams were forced to kind of follow suit because they didn't want to look like they weren't supporting fellow players. And we're now learning a little bit more information about how this whole thing rolled out, and it's very intriguing because if you look at what the messaging has been, if you look at the message politically, you realize the boycott actually exposed the only real power that athletes, players, and ultimately people have in our current system. So I'm just going to give you a quick recap. This is from ABC News. It says the NBA announced Wednesday it chose to postpone all 3 playoffs games scheduled for the day after the Milwaukee Bucks refused to attend their game against the Orlando Magic and continue, and other teams appeared likely to follow suit. The Bucks decided not to take the court in Game 5 of their season of their series against the Magic over the police shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha earlier this week. According to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, the NBA and the NBA Players Association today announced that in light of the Bucks' decision not to take the court, the Houston Rockets and Thunder, Lakers, Blazers have been postponed. The NBA said in a statement, Game 5 of each series will be rescheduled. Now, that is the first thing to note. When you have a boycott, right, that's typically to symbolize like you're not participating. When the games are postponed, however, that gives them an opportunity to make that up, which means the real thing that's being addressed here is the economic loss of those games. I mean, obviously, the NBA has contracts with these television networks are supposed to be broadcasting those games. So if that doesn't happen, there is a huge financial loss to them. I'm sure there's some type of penalty they had to pay, or either way, they want to get their money back. So in order to to remedy this, they're going to reschedule that game. They're not going to act like that game didn't happen. That game will be rescheduled. Now, first, I want to show you guys a clip. This is a clip from, I think, yesterday, where Stephen A. Smith, he's an ESPN guy, he goes through and kind of explains how things happen, because this is what we don't typically hear. We don't typically hear how things actually broke down. This is from the conversation of the players. And basically, we find out who the players were, or who the players were, who the people who made the decisions, and how those conversations went behind closed doors. Interestingly, former President Obama had to get involved to help these players to come to some type of resolution.
Well, first of all, he is the biggest name in the league, obviously the biggest name in sports. He was a bit perturbed because when the Milwaukee Bucks elected not to play and was willing to forfeit its playoff game against the Orlando Magic, they hadn't really told anybody. So LeBron didn't like the fact that they had basically made a unilateral decision, and ultimately the players were compelled to follow them. Not that he had a desire not to or anything like that. It's just that a heads up would have been nice. That was the mentality. Then they go into a meeting Wednesday evening at about 8 p.m. Eastern time, and there was some back and forth exchanges between him and various players, particularly the young guys, that took issue with how he was communicating with them.
Now, I first want to say, again, this is supposed to be, or supposed to have been, a boycott, right? Refusing to play is an act of defiance. It's not meant to be something where we're going to have a conversation with anybody about how we feel if this is going to be our response to some action we feel that should be taking place. First of all, I want to say I don't know. Like, I'm not a player. I don't play for a team, so I don't really know what they're expecting the league to actually do about this. But I totally respect their wanting to use their voice, because this is the voice that they have, their platform. For them to be willing to take a loss financially, or risk suspension, or risk losing the series, if they're willing to do that to stand up for an issue, like, that's admirable. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what a protest is. So that's cool. But the fact that LeBron is saying here he's upset that he wasn't communicated with, like, that tells you the power that players have. And the NFL or the NBA is very unique compared to most sports, because one, it's a team sport. Most team sports, one player can't have that much of an impact on the game. You know what I mean? Like, in football, if you lose your quarterback, he's important, but it's a real team game. Football or basketball is uniquely such a star-driven league. The players are so big. They have such an impact on each game that, a single player can cost a team hundreds of millions of dollars, or they increase the team's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. We saw that when LeBron went from Cleveland initially and then went to Miami, and the huge economic loss LeBron caused the city of Cleveland. Like, that's how major one player can impact a franchise, a city, everything. So the fact that LeBron James represents apparently the voice of the owners, or at least the side of the collective organization, that tells you how this thing is breaking down. And we're actually going to learn quite a bit here about Stephen A. Smith as well. This divide that we have, where you have your guy who represents, who's on the inside, but he truly represents the established organization, the ESPN or the NBA. You just see where everybody really is.
What specifically he was saying, we don't know, but they took issue with how he was talking to them at that particular moment in time. He ultimately stormed out of the meeting. If you recall, there are 11 teams that are participating. 9 of them voted to play. They still wanted to play the game. LeBron James and his Los Angeles Lakers didn't necessarily want to do so, along with the Los Angeles Clippers. Those were the 2 teams that voted against leaving. And then LeBron departed that meeting saying, "I'm good, I'm good," before walking out, which further perturbed the players. Then the following day, when there was a meeting, the commissioner was on a call, the executive director of the Players Association, Michelle Roberts, was on a call, CP3 and the players were out.
So my end is at 250. You see it. So that's where they were. LeBron's on the side of the owners. 9 out of the 10 teams agreed to not play. LeBron's team, LeBron's team, the Lakers and the Clippers, did want to continue playing. But that shows that most of the players were okay sitting out. LeBron was upset. So obviously a few days later, they've now resumed. I think they played their first games yesterday. Everything's back. This is where we are right now. This is the NBA, the players met up. They called former President Barack Obama in, met with the Players Association, met with the owners, and they made some measures that are supposed to make the players feel better. But what you learn now is that this is just symbolism. The initiatives included the immediate establishment of a social justice coalition featuring representatives among players, coaches, and teams that will work on increased voting access, promoting civic engagement, and advocating for meaningful police and criminal justice reform. It called for every owner who owns and controls their arena property to work with local officials to turn these arenas into voting locations for the 2020 general election, or to be a place to register votes and receive ballots if the first item is not possible. The league also agreed to work with both players and its broadcast partners to create advertising that will appear during each NBA playoff game to promote greater civic engagement in national and local elections and to raise awareness around voting access. So I'm not saying these aren't things. That's stuff. That's great. That is phenomenal that you were able to pressure the owners into agreeing to allow their arenas to be used for polling places. Like, that's fantastic. But that is limited, because the real power you had was when you didn't show up. right? And what you're about to see here is this is great. This is great because, like I said, I love this because this is revealing everything. This entire pandemic has taught us so much about power, where it lies, and how you control it. And economic power is all you have. Okay, that is all you have. That's what we learned here. The NBA responded to players causing them some type of financial issue. When the financial incentive was high, the NBA said, "Hold on, we gotta stop these. We gotta first of all we have to reschedule these games. We can't lose this money." But then, for them to say, "Okay, we'll give you here's some little peace offerings, and let's just get back to playing." Like, come on, man, you've learned nothing. But obviously, you've learned that the most powerful player in the NBA is LeBron James, and his power is able to coerce the league into getting back to action. But a few months ago, this conversation came up again. Because when I heard this, I was like, wait a minute. I swear I remember hearing something about Kyrie Irving, former teammate of LeBron James, months ago, having some type of confrontation with other players, telling them that if we go back to playing, that's going to cause an issue. We're going to be interfering with the attempts of either the community or whatever things that the players have already started working on to get criminal justice reform. The players do have power. That's why this whole shut up and dribble thing or whatever shut up and play ball thing, that's where that comes from. They know that these players have power because of their economic power, not because you care what Kyrie Irving thinks, you care what LeBron James thinks. It's because LeBron James makes you so much money. If you don't acquiesce to what he's asking for, then it will impact you economically. Otherwise, you don't care what he thinks. But now you know that. So when you see the players with their, I saw this picture. I didn't even realize how big this hashtags on the jerseys and things is. Because I haven't watched the game in years, but I was watching a game the other day. I was passing through a restaurant, or I was at a friend's house, and the game was on, and I saw they had words on the back of their jerseys. But you see all these different. I'm sorry, let me make this a little bit bigger for you. If you check, this is all of these different sports leagues all across the world. Apparently, they got the Black Lives Matter on. They got the hashtags and. Like, I guess they're wearing these special T-shirts. And look at this. Look at all this. Oh, this is amazing. Right? Right. Now get back. We'll give you some T-shirts. Now get back to playing. You're costing me money right now. They want the Chinese market. Well, clearly, that's definitely true. But let's hear Stephen A. couple of months ago. Well, let's first hear what happened a few months ago when the players were deciding to resume playing basketball after the pandemic initially hit.
During a call with nearly 100 players Friday night. On the 90-minute call, Irving reportedly made the case that resuming the season would be detrimental to the players' work on social justice and police reform. Dwight Howard agrees. In a statement to CNN, he said in part, "I agree with Kyrie. Basketball or entertainment period isn't needed at this moment and will only be a distraction. Sure, it might not distract us, the players, but we have resources at hand the majority of our community don't have. And the smallest distraction for them can start a trickle-down effect that may never stop. Especially with the way the climate is now, I would love nothing more than to win my very first NBA championship, but the unity of my people would be an even bigger championship that's just too beautiful to pass up." Steven Jackson, meanwhile, offered these thoughts.
Playing basketball is going to do one thing: take all the attention off the task at hand right now and what we fighting for. Everybody going to be worrying about the playoffs. They're going to have all that blasted all over the TV, and nobody's going to be talking about getting justice for all these senseless murders by the police, and nobody's going to be focusing on the task at hand, bro. None of these white owners have spoken up. None of them are taking a stand. Yeah, they might post a video when the season starts or saying what we should do, but they ain't doing nothing. Playing basketball ain't gonna do nothing but make them money and take the attention of what we fighting for, what we marching for. It's bigger than all of us, and it's bigger than the game. And I'm sad that we still got to explain that to people, bro.
Patrick Beverly of the Clippers sees it differently. He tweeted, "Hoopers, say what you want. If King James says he's hooping, we're all hooping, not personal, only business. Hashtag stay woke."
It's not business, it's only personal. This is this is really amazing, because what you're seeing right now is our economic system. You're seeing capitalism, and Just this is what it is. This is what it is. You have the masses, you have the elites. And you see how the elites still manage to control the masses with just a few statements. We'll give you T-shirts. You got to play. I suppose the major urban areas that... Oh, you guys are arguing. I'm sorry. To carry on, guys. But yeah, these are statements. These are players who understand the implications that or how the NBA plays their role as a distraction. This is how it keeps people not focusing on mobilization or getting things done. I remember when the pandemic first hit, and I was still really trying to get people to buy. We were talking about UBI. You guys want UBI? I said, hey, listen, don't let the pandemic stop you from going out and protesting and letting your elected officials know that this is what you want, because if you don't, it will go all for naught. And then what happened? That issue got moved out of the way because we had racial inequality pop up again because of additional shootings. So it's like, and now we have people protesting anyway. So if you had just listened to me, you'd been ahead of the curve. But, don't nobody listen to me. That's fine. But that's okay. This is, again, months ago. This is June 15th. So here we are in August, right? They didn't want to. Kyrie said not to go back. And other guys said to play. It seemed like a crazy idea. Why would we not play? How can we not play? We got to play. We got to play. We're just players. We don't really matter. 2:35. We have Stephen A. Smith, ESPN employee, letting us know again who he aligns with. And this, you need to understand these dynamics, because when you watch certain people and they get up and they do something or they say something, you need to know who they're representing. And now we know. Now all these people are exposed. If it was ever unclear who these people represent, now you know. LeBron James represents the NBA owners. Stephen A. Smith represents the corporate media who is trying to continue to just make money off these players. They don't want you to have a voice, and then they'll give you some T-shirts because that's easy. It's easy to give you a T-shirt and send you back to the game. Just don't stop playing, because we'll lose money. That would be a problem.
And resume the season.
I completely disagree with them, and I think they sound foolish. Let's get this out of the way right now. I've been waiting to talk about this, and I can't wait to get into this more heavily on First Take. I respect the fact that obviously everything's going on. You can't be a black man and not respect what we're seeing, particularly from these young warriors out here taking to the streets and making sure that they do everything that they can to raise awareness to what's going on and bring attention to it. But the real work is going to be done by other people within the legal profession and beyond after the awareness is brought to their attention, and you buffer them with the level of support monetarily and otherwise that they may require. You're Kyrie Irving and you're Dwight Howard. If you are talking about not going back to work because of the coronavirus, nothing to talk about.
Come on,
everybody has the right to feel the way that they feel in terms of their own individual health, the health of their loved ones, who they're going to be near, all of that stuff. That is a separate subject.
Okay, stop right there. That is a separate subject. No, we just learned that it's not a separate subject. You need the economic influence of the Kyrie Irvings, of the LeBron Jameses, of these other people, in order for the people who are actually doing the work in the streets, the lawyers and the activists and the people who actually are in those meetings that no one attends. You need those people to have the backing of these guys, because these guys have influence and money. But what you do is you want to divide them. And you want to say, no, you guys just do your thing. You just keep playing. And you continue with your meetings. We're not going to give you anything, but you continue with the meetings, and we'll make it seem like you guys are making some headway. We got the T-shirts going on for. Oh, YouTube's not receiving my signal, of course. Yeah, we'll give you this stuff. What are you guys talking about? Yeah, well, you continue playing. That has no impact whatsoever on whether or not policy is going to change, except for it has almost everything to do with whether or not policy will change. Because without the influence and the economics of those players, the people who are actually in those meetings have no power. That's how this works. That's how capitalism works. If you don't have economics, you have no power. You have no control. Your voice is not going anywhere. You see it with leftists trying to get things done. It ain't happening. You see it with other smaller marginalized groups. Is that you have to have the economics. The only way you have control is if you control a resource or if you control the economics. So the NBA players have a monopoly on the entertainment and the economics that are associated with it. And then you have a few players who are so heavily valued that they can nearly control the entire league. And they do. So LeBron James signs a $1 billion deal with Nike, and he can only make so much money in the league because of salary cap and things like that. But he makes that. But he makes that because of his association with the NBA. He can make the money with Nike, and then that creates other opportunities for him. So LeBron James is super, super good. He's the aspirational guy. You can be like LeBron James. I mean, you can't be, but we'll just tell you that you can be like LeBron James. But really, we need LeBron James, because without LeBron James, we don't have control over the other players. And then we're going to tell you, no, these are separate things. These things have nothing to do with one another. Come on, man.
But to sit up there and imply that at this particular moment in time that sports should not exist and we shouldn't be going back to work because of racial inequality, prejudice, police brutality, et cetera, these are things that have been going on for decades, if not more. Some would say centuries, obviously, when we're talking about racial oppression. So if that's the case, then there was no reason for anybody, whether it's your forefathers, your ancestors, or anybody in between, to ever show up to work. The reality...
What? It's like he's making a case that people shouldn't boycott things because boycotting doesn't work. What was the Montgomery bus boycott, man? What are you talking about? Like, I don't even understand this argument that he's making right now. This is an argument, I don't know. Disney was like, listen, you got to get those players to get back. I need you to try to justify what's going on. You're exposing yourself right now, Stephen A. You should have no part in this. But the bigger point is that he's lying. He's 100% lying because he knows. The reason why he wants the players to get back to work is because he needs something to talk about. Because, see, now his money's getting affected because he works for ESPN, and they cover the NBA. And he makes a whole lot of money talking about NBA players playing. So... what's the matter about this?
The reality is that you have a job to do. If you're Kyrie Irving, you're hurt, you're sitting out in...
Oh, I'm sorry. And he says, we have a job to do. And you know what? I 100% agree to that, okay? I 100% agree that that's the risk. These players have to be willing to suffer the economic loss that will come to them personally if they sit out. Like, they have to be willing to be sued. They have to be willing to lose their paycheck. They have to be like, we see this with collective bargaining with players all the time. Whenever they have their contracts up for renewal, what often ends up happening is because the players, we know notoriously players are horrible with money. They're young guys. They get millions and millions of dollars. And then they, tricking. They have fancy cars and they flying girls out and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And then after 3 months of trying to hold the line, eventually they're like, man, I don't have any money. So they're taking ridiculously high interest loans from the guys who do have money, or they're just saying, you know what, I'm ready to bend and I'm ready to go out and say, okay, fine, I'll go back to work. But if you're willing and if you're capable of sitting back and waiting and using the leverage that you have to hurt the player, the owners, because the owners, the players lose millions of dollars, but the owners lose billions of dollars. But if you can hold it, then you have your power. Then you can actually get real change. Not that the NBA, offering to turn arenas into polling places, that's not nothing. It's something. Obviously, they weren't doing it before, but imagine what you could get if you could sit out for 2 weeks or a month or a year. It only builds. Imagine what you can get if you're willing to say, you know what, we'll go start our own league. But their unwillingness to do that limits their power, and it ultimately limits the power of the people that they're trying to support.
Anyway, in all likelihood, you're Dwight Howard. You want to pass up the opportunity to win a championship for the first time because you want to bring attention and awareness to this? Fine. I don't recall Adam Silver, the commissioner of the National Basketball Association, or anybody in the world of sports at this particular moment in time prohibiting or trying to deny or stop players from putting forth their due diligence to bring attention to the issues that have ravaged our society and has been ravaging our society. So to use that as an excuse not to show up to work, and I don't mean excuse as if they're looking for an excuse. I'm sure that their feelings are sincere and heartfelt. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that's no reason not to show up to work. The fact that racial oppression has existed, it's going to exist after this summer. It's going to exist next year. It's going to exist a year after, a year from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Anybody in our society that thinks this thing is going to be completely eradicated is fooling themselves. You're always going to have to deal with these things. So that is not an excuse not to show up to work, to do your job. You can fight the fight while still showing up to work. And
no, you cannot fight the fight while still willing to go to work. The only way you can fight the fight is by being willing not to go to work. Period. Period. Everybody knows this. Okay? When you see a bunch of workers at a factory upset about conditions, their willingness to not go to work is their power. When you go to work, that makes it so you're complicit. You're like, oh, okay, cool. I'm cool with what's going on. But when you sit out, and when they can't get replacements to fill your void, and they start losing money, all of a sudden your concerns seem a little bit legitimate, willing to have a conversation about them. It's amazing what economics does. So this whole thing, I know we don't typically talk about sports, but really what this is all about is divide and conquer. Because that principle is 100% undefeated. It works on all levels, and we're seeing it once again. And the only way you are ever going to see any kind of justice, any kind of change, or be able to get whatever it is you think that our society deserves to have is by doing it together. With that said, I'm going to get out of here. I would love to hear what you guys think. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like, subscribe for more. See you guys.